Welcome to the webinar. I am Sophia Burris, and this topic is creating a learning flow, taking design ideas from abstract to specific. I appreciate you all being here today. I actually am not feeling my best, so excuse me if I get a little funky. To define a learning flow, we have it at its base and core, it is a flow chart. And it shows the connections between a learning element or all of your learning elements in a single curriculum, program, or learning event. I use these pretty often at work to put everything in order and get the team going on creating ideas. So let's do a Google poll. This is to see how many of you have used one or are familiar with a learning flow. I'm putting the link in the chat, so go ahead and go there and fill out your information or answer and press submit. Oh, please post the link again. I apologize. Here we are. You're welcome. Okay, so it seems like we have most of the responses. All right, so we have some percentages. So we have 6 of you who have answered, no, I have never used a learning flow, and maybe 1 or 2 people who have answered, yes, I have used one, but not always. Well, great. Seems like there are some people who know what's going on and some people who are learning something new. Wonderful. Oops, all right, so we have our Google poll, and I'll give you a little more information about learning flows now. The purpose for me is to outline learning events and elements in sequence. For example, I used one today for this webinar. So I put a start over here, and then there's an introduction. I gave you a definition, and then we're going through the about flows portion here, and then I'll give you a step-by-step process. We'll do a demonstration, and then we'll reflect on how we use them or not use them. The benefits of a learning flow are to get the big picture before you create any content or elements. This is to sort of brainstorm. It also double checks that you have all the elements that you'll need for what you want to teach or provide for information to people. It also provides a way to get team sign off. So if you have a team of 10 people, it may be good to have a learning flow to make sure everyone understands what we're designing and how we're going to be thinking about it in the future. I use learning flows to guide development for myself, and it gives the team a little bit of focus when we're writing content and when we're programming things. It also can reduce fluff. Oftentimes in learning curriculums and events, we tend to put in a little extra information than the learner actually needs to know, and you don't want to overwhelm them. So a learning flow can provide a chance to double check that everything relates to each other, that everything relates to other elements. It can also restrict last-minute changes that are not vital to the success of learning outcome goals. So if you have a last-minute change that is really important for the success of the learner, it is worth going through and making that change. But sometimes those last-minute changes aren't that important. So it can help, the flow can help you make that decision. Ultimately, a learning flow is a time saver. It can save time in development and design by getting everything on paper prior to content and learning event development. Does anyone have any questions? I'll also be watching the chat if you want to put questions in there. No questions for Haley? All right, well, feel free to speak up if you think of something. So the step-by-step process, it's a six-step process and it's pretty easy. The first step is to determine your learning specifications. This sort of happens before you create anything for the learning flow. This is where you determine what your topic is, what your learning objectives are, and if you have any restrictions or requirements. For instance, you might be restricted to an online environment or to a more mobile learning environment, and that's important to know before you do your learning flow. Step 2 is to choose a tool. I often use Glyphy. It is a Chrome add-on. You can also use one that you probably already have on your computer, and that is PowerPoint. PowerPoint does have the functions to do a learning flow or flow chart. Step 3 is to create a shape for each learning element. This is to make sure that you haven't missed anything and you're getting your big picture items. Step 4, you'll check that each element can flow into the next. Sometimes I miss my introductions, or I miss the quiz, or I miss some sort of segue text, and that's important to have in there so you don't forget to write it. Step 5 is to connect the elements to show the movement and where everything is related. And step 6 is to export and save. So let's do a demonstration. I'll need your help to come up with a topic and learning objectives for step 1. So help me choose a topic. For example, we could do drawing a cat. Does anyone have any preference? We could just do drawing a cat. Okay, drawing a cat sounds good. All right, so we'll draw a cat. That makes it easy for a learning objective because I already wrote it. So draw a cat with a face, ears, and whiskers. And then we'll do our requirements and restrictions. So we must have one of each type of activity: absorb, do, and connect. These are Horton's activities. Absorb is to teach new information, do is to provide practice with it, and connect is to create new connections with your previous experience and knowledge with your new knowledge from what you're learning. We also have to deliver this in an e-learning environment. So we'll keep that in mind for our demonstration here. I'm going to stop my share really quickly and change the board so that you can see my full desktop. And oops, I need to go and get Glyphy now. So I have Glyphy installed on my Google Chrome as an add-on, and it'll open in a new window once I click on it. So holler if you cannot see the Glyphy window. Great, so it's showed up for me. I need a new one here. And hopefully it'll provide me a blank canvas. I'll start drawing. Okay, so we know our topic, and that is draw a cat. And our learning objective is to draw a cat with, I think it was eyes, a face. I don't remember now, but we can make it up, and whiskers. All right, so we have that here to remind us. I always start with a start circle. This helps me remember where we're starting in our learning here. Does someone have a question? I heard something come up. Okay. So now I'm creating boxes, and how I create these is you drag them from this left menu here. There's also different types of shapes you can use. I'm not really quite sure where you would use some of these shapes, but I'm sure they fit into other industries. All right, so we probably need some squares here, and then we'll fill them in with our activities. So let's say we need an absorb activity here. And that is to teach people how to draw a cat. So we are going to do maybe a tutorial, a guided, let's do a video tutorial. And sometimes you can leave out some words in these learning flows. It's just enough wording to give you an idea of what's going to go there. You don't want to be too ambiguous, of course, but it doesn't need to be a complete sentence. So let's do our connect activity here. And that is to maybe draw a cat freehand on computer. Seems pretty difficult, but hopefully we are teaching them all of the knowledge that they need to know. And then we'll do a do. So maybe this is their drag and drop for cat parts. So they have a library of parts and they can drag and drop them to create their cat. So we have done step 1 and step 2. We filled in our shapes. And then step 4 is to make sure that everything sort of flows and that we have everything. Does it look like everything's there, or maybe we need to reorder anything? So I did this on purpose, actually. So we have an absorb, connect, and do. So we're having them connect their new information before they get a chance to practice with it. So I'm going to sort of switch this around. And there is some theory that says you should have them test themselves before they do anything as a learner. But let's put it in this order just so it makes a little more sense to me. And then I'm going to put a summary here because it seems like we might need one of those. So, and then step 5 is to connect them all. Up here you have your controls, and the middle one is the connector tool. So yes, Louisa, I think there is a description when you hover over. There was a question in the chat. Yes, so it tells you what the shape is here. Up here in the menu, it shows you what each tool does. So rectangle tool, ellipse tool, text tool, yes. So if you hover, it tells you what the tool is. So to connect, you can hover over these cross marks here on the shapes, and it'll give you, give you a red circle. That red circle indicates that you're actually connecting it to the shape. So I'll connect the start with the absorb, and this little box shows up here with a line and a letter. And to change this connector to an arrow, I have to click on the diagonal line and change it to an arrow. And the good news is once you do that once, it's changed for all of them. So once again, these offer direction in what order all of the elements will go in. Once you have them, you can change your tool to your, what do they call it? Pointer tool. This is really just the tool you can use to move things around. So when you have things connected with those red dots, you can drag things around sort of wherever you want them on the page, and they will still be connected to each other in order. All right, so step 6, we're gonna save and export. So I'll save this on my desktop as cat draw. Hopefully that will do. And then for Glyphy, you have to save it separately as a picture file, and I'll do a JPEG today. So there we are. And it should export it. I always have to check though, because sometimes it exports funky to the picture file. So we'll go here and we'll open it. And there it is. So we have the drawing here in a JPEG that we created in Glyphy. So I'm going to go back to the Chrome browser here to the presentation. And we'll continue. Does anyone have any questions? I can bring up Glyphy again if you'd like to see anything. Do you need an endpoint? I just saw that in the chat. I would sometimes put an endpoint in. Sometimes if you have something that's more exploratory learning, you don't need an endpoint because there may not be an endpoint. But if something is chronological and you want people to go through things from beginning to end, and then there will be an end screen or something that says thank you, then that is a good point to put an end in. Does anyone have any questions? I'm going to, yes, I see one. Have you used Glyphy on a PC? Are the decision points, so if they answer Y, send them here. If they answered N, send them here. Yes, I have used decisions. Actually, I'm going to share Glyphy again because that's a great question. Oops, I changed it. Oops. Ooh, sorry for the confusion. So I'm going back to Glyphy. So the decision points, how I usually indicate them is with a diamond And this is something a programmer taught me, so this is why I use this. I use a diamond, and this is where you would have your yes or no question. So say we had a quiz at the end, and we would say pass or fail. All right, so let's see, they pass or fail the connect activity. And then we'll draw arrows for that. So if they passed, they would go to the summary, and the summary would tell them, congratulations, you passed. And we'll put yes for that arrow, excuse me. If they did not pass, we would send them back to start and say, no, they did not pass. And you can do this with many elements within one map. Does that answer your question? Yes, perfect. Okay. Okay, so we're back in the slides here. So let's do a little bit of reflection. In what situations would you use a learning flow? Good to know that it's easier than Visio. Planning a course project is when you would use it to get buy-off from team before development. That's a good way to use it. Planning a presentation, yes. I used it for this presentation. Implementing a new procedures at work, yes, that is a good place to use a flow. Might be useful to plan a lit review. Yes, it could be useful in that. You could break it up into sections. I agree. All right, so are there any examples of situations in which you would not use a learning flow or a flow chart? You wanted, okay, so a place you would not use a flow is if you wanted something co-constructed with learners. Yeah, that might be hard because they would influence the rest of your flow, I would guess. Okay. To develop a budget, yeah, that might not be very effective. Although you could use a learning flow to teach someone how to do a budget. That might work. You could use it as a co-creation tool, yes. All right, well, let me know if you think of anything else. In summary, a learning flow is a flowchart for learning event outlines. It can be used to translate your abstract learning ideas and topics into a concrete idea. So you're turning it into something more tangible or more interpretable. And it will guide you in writing your content and developing your learning pieces. So it's all in the handout that you have in Google Docs here. The first part is your step-by-step process. And again, this link is in the beginning of the chat, but I can post it again before we end the meeting. And then the second part is tools for creating flowcharts. I have used PowerPoint. It's not as easy or effective as Glyphy. I've also used Draw.io. It's very similar to Glyphy. So I figure if I know how to use Glyphy, I should probably stick with it. But there may be some benefits to using one over the other that I'm not aware of. All right, so thank you very much. I'm glad that we got to do this. If you have any follow-up questions, my email is down here at the bottom, sophiaburris@ucdenver.edu. And if you have any more questions, you can put them in the chat. I will repost the Google Handout link, hopefully. I can copy it. And once again, I appreciate you all being online. Can you demonstrate Glyphy at KB 101? Yes, Mary, I am more than willing to do that. Good, Liz. I'm glad it'll be useful for you. You're welcome, everybody. I'm going to end the meeting now. And again, you can email me or contact me in any other way to ask some follow-up questions.